Welcome, Jessica.
Hi, thank you for having me.
It's so crazy having you here in person because I'm so deeply used to your voice from listening to the podcast every week. So this is really like the ultimate full circle manifestation because I talk about to be magnetic on here literally all the time. It is like one of my top questions I get is people want to understand it. So guys, we have the literal person who understands it the absolute best, maybe outside of Lacey, sitting here. So I'm really excited to pick your brain.
I'm so excited to be here. It feels also so full because your manifestation with your relationship and seeing that come to fruition, just how beautiful that process is and also so expansive for so many people. Like the amount of people that I saw your reel that said the psychic told you that, you know, you're going to get engaged and you're like, what?
Yeah.
And it's like if people could just know you getting into your full alignment can actually move things so much
Expedited
faster.
package.
Quantum leaps.
It is really, I think it's important for people to hear. And I think that, you know, as someone who has had so many expanders in the relationship area, people telling me that I'm an expander for them, like it still hasn't fully hit me at how amazing that is because I can't tell you how many lists and names and people and like sourcing I've done of like, okay, like this is the energy. And I really believe that me receiving that manifestation of a fiance, of like my perfect created situation, back to what you were saying, is sort of this culmination of like everything else being in alignment. So I'd love to start from the top. I'm personally just curious how you got involved with To Be Magnetic. I can only assume that it had to do with a manifestation.
Yeah. So I started my career in TV and film.
Cool.
I think the underpinning desire with that was I was so moved by certain films and shows that I really wanted to work on stuff that was going to change people's lives. Like, what is the story? What is the narrative that could like give you that you know, when you watch a movie and you're like, wow, something struck me and I'm forever changed. I was like, I want to make that. Like,
To feel it.
Yeah, to feel it, to give people that feeling. Like, that to me was such a driver. And so I was like, great, I'll go into TV and film. Went to school for that. Had honestly like a good success and was at a really good executive level, producer title. I ran a casting department, like all the things. And I was like, it just doesn't feel like I thought it was going to feel. And part of that was like maybe I wasn't working on the projects that felt 100% aligned, but it felt like resistance getting to those projects. It took a lot longer to get those stories out. And I got this like deep interest and feeling of like, what if we took all the skills that we have and move it over into more a self-help space, into a more wellness space? Like what could happen if I brought my skill set to a company through the media lens? And so that really interests me. And of course I was obsessed with this brand To Be Magnetic at the time. And we always say don't manifest specifics for a couple reasons. One, because it keeps you limited. You're basically putting that very specific thing on a pedestal. So if you're like, I don't want to just manifest a partner, I want to manifest Ryan from work. Or
you also can't control Ryan.
Exactly. Ryan has to be real. Or I want to manifest just working at To Be Magnetic. Like you're putting it on a pedestal in a certain way. So I knew from doing the TBM work, I was like, okay, I want to work for a company like To Be Magnetic.
You broadened it.
I was like, I like To Be Magnetic. I want to be bringing these transformational stories. I want someone that has a podcast arm so you can like really showcase the features there. I want someone that is creating workshops and tools and is like really interested in like what's going on behind the scenes, like under the hood and transforming people's lives. And I kept getting, we call them pings, but they're intuitive hits.
That's on my list.
for things I could do at TBM. I was like, okay, well, this workshop, like I would, you know, we have to move this around and this has it. And I was like, okay, Jess, like we really got to let this go. Like it has to be this or something else. And I wound up talking to a bunch of other companies, and I actually launched my own podcast in the process. And lo and behold, through the manifestation work, through unblocking and like really getting clarity and also releasing what the company needed to be, of course, TBM was hiring for
Naturally
a producer for their podcast. And I was like, amazing. And 6 years later, I'm their chief content officer, constructing all the workshops, meditation, synthesizing between the founder and our neuroscience advisor, psychology advisor, and hosting the podcast. And
it's incredible.
Took off from there.
Yeah. And you've been like, how long have you been hosting the podcast for?
6 years.
Wow, the whole time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I would say the first 3 months I started just producing, and then Lacey was like, come in.
Yeah.
Let's do this together.
It's really cool to see. And I also think, you know, you're such an embodiment of the TBM work. So I want to make this episode helpful for people that do and don't know TBM. Yeah. I'm going to assume that like a percentage do, but let's start from basics of exactly what to be magnetic is and why it was created.
Yeah. So to be magnetic is the #1 science-backed manifestation method. And really what TBM does differently than so many other manifestation trends. You have manifestation TikTok now and like all the little hacks. We're actually helping create the shifts on a subconscious level in your brain, removing the limiting beliefs so you can actually manifest what you want. We're manifesting all the time. Like whether we're conscious of it or not, our reality is a reflection of our self-worth. Our reality is a reflection of what we feel deserving of, what we feel expanded to, and the actions we're taking. And sometimes we're self-sabotaging, we don't know it. You know, sometimes we're keeping ourselves small and we don't know it. And a lot of that roots down to the limiting beliefs. Like what are the narratives, what are the limiting stories that we have in our subconscious that are actually running the show? I think the statistic is like 97% of our behavior is run by our subconscious.
Whoa.
So everything that's going on is like on autopilot. You know, your brain wants to make it easy for you. So it's like, cool, let me pull up all the data points, all the info I have on whatever it is you're manifesting or whatever your goal is, and let's reference what I can do and can't do in that space. And oftentimes there's a lot of limitation. There's a lot of fear. And not even just fear conceptually, but fear somatically. Like our bodies get so tense and tight and nervous, and our nervous system shut down in a freeze state or in a fight or flight state. So it's really crafting the tools to help you move through those processes with ease. The founder, Lacey Phillips, really saw, okay, this is how things are moving in such a deeper, more linear way than a lot of the manifestation methods out there, and put it together and really like a quick multi-step process. But beyond just that manifestation workshop, we have all of the reprogramming tools. If you're like in a very specific theme, money, love, etc., rut, rock bottom, we're going to give you the protocol of like, okay, this is how you work within it on a subconscious level, conscious level, and then how you transform your reality.
So if someone were to start to be magnetic, which I use regularly, and I'm like, I've been sort of, I will say last year's challenge at the end of the year, was it, I can't remember what it was called.
I think it was the end of year manifestation challenge.
End of year manifestation challenge completely propelled and changed my life. I sat down with a girlfriend. We were in Florida. I was like about to go through a breakup. She was kind of in it too. And we were like, this is our time. We were at her parents' house, and every day we just sat down with our journals and like ripped through multiple days at a time. And we did the challenge, and like everything has shifted since that.
Wow.
So I will say to people, like, the challenges are a really good way to sort of like ramp up that energy and like motivate yourself to get the work done, because it can be a little hard. You know, you work all day, you're busy, you're running around, so many people have kids and families, and then to like finish the day and be like, all right, time to go inward, it can be really hard. I'm sure you can relate.
100%.
But there is a level of momentum that comes from these things that is crazy, and like I can't even personally make sense of.
There, you know, it's kind of interesting. So we've had the workshops for a few years, and we've had the deep imaginings, which are our reprogramming audios that help get into that really subconscious state. But we've started launching the challenge maybe over the last 3 years, and we've seen something really magical with it. We have them twice a year. And every time we do them, I think it's the combination of the entire community doing it as well. And then they're also feeding off of each other and communicating to each other. A lot of people call their friends in, and they'll be like, do this with me. Having that accountability, and then also being in this like, it's almost like a manifestation bubble where you're everyone around you and every data point you're interacting with us is like, it's possible, you can do it. And to have that sort of support system at the same time when you're making giant leaps of faith, like people will leave a relationship, like you were saying, people are going to shift jobs, like they discover things about themselves that they didn't know before, and it becomes glaringly obvious where the problem is in their life, or what the thing is that's holding them back, what the thing is that they're settling for. And so making those changes can be hard, but having that support, I think, really I mean, like the results are insane. The things that people have manifested is wild.
Yeah, there's definitely a collective energy that I think is felt through it, which is really cool that you guys have cultivated. So from what you're saying, we manifest from our subconscious.
Yeah.
Where do those limiting beliefs come from? Like, is it they're kind of collected over a lifetime? Obviously, we are sponges as children. I can only assume that a lot of it comes from that time. And also, how do sort of like, a lot of these are subconscious, right? So how do people identify them?
So like you said, I love that you brought up the sponges concept. So from 0 to 7 and then even 14, our brains are pretty much just on like record mode. It's looking to every single data point of who am I? What do I need to be to survive? How do I get my needs met? How do I have love and connection, which is a need we need for survival? And it's really looking to all of that. And so if you have a home environment that isn't nurturing who you are authentically or what your authentic desires are, you're going to think, okay, well, I have to be, I don't know, a lawyer in order to be successful in the world. I don't have any artists in my family and I don't know that I can be an artist. So this is what my brain sees as a path of success. I don't see another route. That could be one route limiting beliefs come in. Another is peers. You know, you could be around kids at school and they could make fun of you because you're super tall. And your whole life you're like, wow, it's better if I was shorter. And so when you go out into a situation, you might hunch your shoulders make yourself small, not really stand in the bigness of your energy, of your space, of whatever you physically look like. And there's all these kind of like micro things that we pick up even from society as a whole. You know, I was thinking the other day about the word expensive and how so often people are like, that's expensive, that's expensive, that's expensive. And it's said oftentimes as like a negative connotation. I can't afford it. Yeah. That's expensive.
Out of reach.
But how often is the thing that people are saying expensive actually out of reach? And how often is it just something they don't want to spend their money on? Right? Like,
or that they don't feel deserving of.
Yes, 100%. So it's like being intentional with how they're communicating, how they relate to things. You can see your limiting beliefs right there.
And I also think on that note, the way that we speak is really important. Is that, I haven't specifically seen that in the TB magnetic work, but I'm curious what you think about how we talk about our lives, how we talk about ourselves, and how that plays into like creating our reality.
So through the To Be Magnetic framework, there's kind of 3 ways our self-worth and our subconscious show up. It's our limiting beliefs, subconscious thoughts, which we can access when we go into like a deep theta state. Back to your question before, when we're in that deep meditative state, we can actually pull forward old memories, old thoughts, like find those old connective tissues and be like, oh, wow, yeah, that is what's happening there. You can also find it through journaling. So all of the tools that we have in the membership is really geared towards how do we find those like really fine-tuned hidden things through journaling and the deep imaginings. But that's one route. The other spot you can find your subconscious beliefs is through expanders. Do you see to believe that it's possible for you? Do the people around you give you an example that you could do it, or do they give you evidence that it's not possible? And then the third way is we call them aligned actions. So they're not just actions we take in the world, but they're actions that are in alignment with our highest self, with our authentic self. So when you are speaking things in the world, they're kind of a good reflection of whatever your subconscious believes. So if you're talking poorly about yourself, or even in your head, our latest challenge, we have this concept around the inner critic and setting boundaries with your inner critic, because it can get really loud. And honestly, if we look at the inner critic and that voice in our head that's so critical with a bit more compassion, instead of trying to shut it down, we can kind of look at it and say, oh, I understand why you're there. Like you saw that, you know, for me, when I was in 5th grade, got bullied for what my weight was. So my whole life, I'm like, I have to look XYZ way. Otherwise, I will literally get bullied and that will feel horrible. So then that inner critic comes up. Like anytime that, you know, you're judging yourself, you're looking at your body, you're self-checking all the things, there's that voice again. But if you can actually sit with, and this is what we do in the DIs, sit with that part and say, okay, I understand why you're so critical. You're just trying to protect me. Like this is all because you're trying to avoid the pain that I felt as a little 5th grader. And actually, I do these in the inner child DI. I'll be like, actually, Jess, like, we're good. We're allowed to enjoy our body now. We don't have to like be so hard on it anymore. Yeah. And just that gentleness really rewire something in the brain where your body and your nervous system can just relax.
I love that you say that because, and I think this applies to anything, whether you're meditating and you're having a lot of thoughts come in, using force in these processes is never going to be beneficial. And so being able to replace force or lack or fear or lack of safety with compassion for yourself, it almost reminds me when you say that part of you, like an internal family systems thing, the inner critic.
Yep.
And viewing it as something separate from you, I also think is super helpful because it's no longer like a part of your identity.
Yeah.
And you can speak to her in a different way.
And if you can see, you know, if anyone's familiar with internal family systems, like we love bringing that modality into the work too, because we're like, this is so helpful in contextualizing your limiting beliefs. Like attach a limiting belief to one part of yourself. What is their essence? How do they behave? What actions do they take? That can show you where you're self-sabotaging in real life. Our challenge last summer was really focused on that and pulling apart that one big block, that one big thing that was in the way. And then on a somatic level, where does it show up? When it feels, you know, like it has to protect itself or defend itself or whatever, how do you interact with others? Are you judging? Are you projecting? Do you shut down? Like, how does that literally change how you interact with the world? And if we can kind of wind that back, and then you have expanders of people that are doing something different, then your aligned actions change.
Okay, I'm realizing that I keep mentioning expander and we haven't fully defined it. So Can you talk a little bit more about why we need expanders and what they are?
So expanders is a term that Lacy Phillips, the founder, coined. And you probably hear it in the zeitgeist now all the time, which is so wild to see.
Everyone's saying it.
It's everywhere. It's so funny.
She needs like a little trademark next
I know.
to it.
We do have it trademarked.
Amazing.
Yes. So I think it's Expanders by Lacy Phillips.
Yeah.
But expanders is the concept that these are people who are showing you what you want is possible. They're your inspiration, not to put on a pedestal, but your inspiration that just by the mere fact that they are in your orbit, that you see what they're doing, that you feel inspired or any tinge of excitement or even jealousy or envy.
Which is an interesting one to play with.
Yeah, even when you see that pop up, they are literally your roadmap to something that you need to step in for yourself. Now, if you see someone online and you're really envious of their lifestyle, it doesn't mean you have to go out and copy their lifestyle, but it means something at the root of what they are doing is authentic to you and you are not allowing yourself to fully live that out. So what is it about their lifestyle? Is it that they're so free during their work week that it looks like they're on vacation all the time? Is it that they really enjoy their work and you hate your job? Like, how can you see what they're doing and take it as a sign that this is the universe trying to remind you that what you want is possible for you? That, look, they're living that life, and if they are, you can too. And the more expanders you have, especially if you have expanders in real life, that's the game changer.
What a gift. To soak all that energy in.
I mean, when I think even financially, when I have been around people that operate from a more abundant mindset, my net worth goes up significantly. And it's not a coincidence. You see how people move with money with ease, and then you're like, oh, I don't have to think about it that way. Or, oh yeah, I could open that other income portal, or maybe I could do it in that way. And then all of a sudden, bam, all these opportunities start coming in, all these experiences start coming in. So it's not that you have to get rid of all of your friends, but be mindful when you're manifesting something. Who are the people, especially like 5 to 10 people around you, or that you interact with regularly, who are mirroring possibility for you versus limitation.
I also think it's really helpful the way you guys speak about picking expanders where you can see yourself in. And it doesn't have to be holistically. It can be, is it called a fragmented expander, where like one part of them you really relate to. For me, especially when I was creating my list of expanders, like I come from a small Midwestern town, right? And so a lot of times when I see people that are really successful, but they came from like a very wealthy East Coast family and they went to boarding school and all of that, like I don't identify with that. And so that's when I think my subconscious mind steps in and is like, you can't have it. So I think it was really important for me to find expanders that came from a similar upbringing as me. And like people don't necessarily think to look at those kinds of things, but speaking of limiting beliefs and programming, it will definitely get in the way if you don't pay attention to it.
100%. So like if you're looking at an expander and something about their story feels distant for you, or like you were saying, they went to boarding school, they had this whole upbringing, like there's too many points of differentiation that I don't see how I could ever make up how to get there, right? Or even with musicians and singers or artists, they look at other artists who started when they were like 8 years old and they're like, why am I not Ariana Grande? And it's like, okay, let's find musicians and singers or artists who started in their 30s, in their 40s, in their 50s. You know, what happened in their trajectory where they had a different life and then they pivoted. Find those success stories to bridge the gap. And then eventually, you know, Ariana can be your expander too.
Yeah.
But just start small, start closest to your narrative.
When you're saying that, it's making me think of Chappell Roan, who I assume is like probably in her 20s, but have you seen that video of her? She's performing Pink Pony Club at like a local, I think she was from Tennessee, like a literal like fair. And she's got a little keyboard and there's like no one listening. And then they fast forward it to like hundreds of thousands of people singing her lyrics in a crowd. It makes me emotional because it's also manifestation. Like I look at people like her or people that have just sort of like come out of the woodwork. And I'm like, you're doing something that I want to know about. In terms of, even if it's unintentionally manifesting, like some of these people are just jumping. Talk about timelines. Like they're coming out of literally nowhere and exploding. So like what's happening there from a mechanic standpoint?
So there's a couple things. When you're looking at limiting beliefs, everyone's are kind of different, right? So I don't know Chaperone's full story, but let's say at that point when she was singing, she might have not had the external success, but internally, what was her narrative? How was she thinking about herself? What was she thinking about her career trajectory? Was she like, wow, I'm not worthy because I didn't make it overnight? Or was she like, this is my passion, I'm doing this forever, I don't care if I'm paid or not paid? Like this is my vision. I don't ever see myself doing anything else. This is what lights me up. This is what's authentic. So I'd be curious to know, like, what was her story in that regard? But then as she keeps going, it's like, okay, who were her expanders? What were those expansion moments too? You can become your own expander. Like if you do something where you step through fear and you conquer something that you didn't think was possible, think back to that time next time you're pushed against your growth edge. And then it's the aligned action. It's like, what things are we doing that are in alignment with that belief? So if she was like, I'm going to make it no matter what, I'm not worried about the timeline, this is what I'm doing, this is what I love, she's going to be able to make smart decisions for herself, to put herself in the long game, to put herself to invest in her voice, to get better at her writing craft, to be a better expression of her authenticity. Authenticity is another component of To Be Magnetic that I think really differentiates from so many different manifestation methods out there. The most magnetic thing you can be is your authentic self. And it's so different for everyone. It's not pretending to be like this person or have that person's energy. Everyone is magnetic and authentic for their unique thumbprint. And the more we can actually just allow ourselves permission to be our unique thumbprint, that's our special sauce. People are like, oh, well, you know, Angelina's like this or Margot Robbie's like that. Like, I need to be like them. It's like, no.
It's the worst thing you could do.
Exactly. They're just being themselves. They are allowing you to see their permission to be themselves and to have high self-worth. And so if you can give yourself permission for all of your quirks, for all of your nuances, for all of your passions, and own it, that is like that magnet. That is that energy where you're like, wait, why does that person like have so much confidence? It's because they love themselves and you're attracted to that and you want to love yourself.
Absolutely.
So that's really the root.
It's something I've really tried to adhere to with this podcast, and I've seen it because I started this about a year ago, And at the time I was, crafting my list, doing the manifestation. I had taken a lot of trust falls. I had gone through a breakup, and I had ended a business partnership that didn't feel aligned, that was also a podcast. And I feel like I really passed those tests, which we can get to what that means and looks like. But it created a different need for me to be authentic, where I was like, okay, there are these people that I look up to, but I'm, as much as I see myself in them and I want what they have and they are expanders, I can't act like them to get what they have, because people will feel that. And I've even felt it in some of my content where, like, in the beginning I would put something out because I felt like I had to be posting a reel, and people energetically respond very differently than when I'm sitting here talking to you, or sitting down having a solo talking about like the raw details of my engagement and just literally being myself. And especially for anyone that's interested in, content creation or podcasts or whatever, like, you also have to do something that you can do on repeat and not be exhausted by. And that can literally only mean being yourself. You can't show up on social media every day and be phony. It would exhaust you and people would feel it. So I think there is a level of authenticity that I have personally felt myself do, and then build that trust muscle a little bit with this podcast of like, oh wow, people actually are responding to this, and something that was really helpful for me in honing in on that is the part of the challenge that, with the authenticity challenge, of creating your authentic code. Yes. So I'd love if you could walk people through what that means and looks like.
So we have an exercise in the program where it basically walks you through all these kind of secret ways you can figure out what your subconscious is naturally drawn to. One example would be like, go through your saved photos on Instagram. What are the most common themes that you're seeing in there? And we have a whole questionnaire in there for you, and a meditation to also connect back to your younger self. Like, what did you do as a kid? There's often so many connective tissues and blueprints in the childhood, how you played, what you were drawn to, what you were interested in, that come up now. Like, I think about how I was obsessed with witches. Like, I wanted to be Sabrina the Teenage Witch on my 16th birthday. And my mom would be like, you have powers now. That didn't happen. But now I work for a manifestation company. But it means
a lot about what you're doing now.
Right?
Yeah.
There's so many little themes that it's like, the universe is kind of giving those to you all the time. Your desires are not just fleeting things. They're actually the roadmap. They're the roadmap to your authenticity. They're the roadmap to your truest self, the roadmap to your ease, your flow, all the things you want to manifest in this lifetime. And so the authentic code helps distill down what are the 4 pillars right now in this chapter of your life that really feel are driving you. They're your values. They're things you're prioritizing. They're things that light you up. And they can stand for a couple different things. For example, one of mine is home. It means my physical home and like really nourishing, like decorating that, making that feel like my oasis. But it's also the home with my body, like how I take care of myself, my self-care practice. Like that pillar is so, so, so important. And so when you're going about the manifestation process and you're going about your life, really checking in, does this new opportunity, does this new situation, romantic situation, align with my pillars, or does it compromise them? Am I going to have to shut down one part of myself completely? Is there space to really allow these pillars to exist in my life and for them to be fluid for me? And I think it's very eye-opening how many people have the pillars but don't connect with them at all. They don't live them out. They don't honor them. They might want, that dream morning routine, but are they actually doing it? And it's like the authentic code gives you permission to say, this is vital to you. This is vital to your magnetism, to your self-help, to your manifestation process, to your goals. And if you don't honor them, that it's going to show up somewhere.
100%. I've experienced that in so many different ways, of like, from having chronic health issues, from having a dysregulated nervous system, all of that. And I think also an interesting piece of the exercise of creating an authentic code is, especially for me, like, I have always, literally, I think back to like kindergarten, caring what I was wearing. Like, I am very aesthetic focused. I love beautiful things. My environment really matters, all of that. Clothing, accessorizing, expression, and that's a part of my code. But prior to really like putting pen to paper and looking at that, I had a lot of shame around it. Because same with like something being expensive or money, or, you know, sometimes even on the podcast, I get negative comments because I talk about manifesting like physical things like a ring or whatever. And I think that it's really important that we understand what matters to us and where it comes from.
Yes.
Because to me, it's not so much about the thing. If I were at home right now, I would want to be wearing this because I would want to feel expressed, and there's just something about aesthetics that like lights me up inside in a way that it's not for everyone. But being able to know that that is like a core value for me that comes from a very meaningful place, and then to filter opportunities and things and my life through it is so impactful.
I would also be interested to see too, like, as you incorporate this part of your authentic code more and more, the messages that are angry about it or upset about it start to dwindle off. Because it's almost like, at least I notice this, when there's an influx of messages coming in that almost like point to this part of you that you're just starting to get confidence. You're like, wow, I'm finally putting this part of myself out there.
It's almost like a test.
Yes.
It's like, are you going to be insecure about that?
Are you now going to play small because a few people got mad about it? Whereas, you know, if you're fully embodied, you're like, I am fully unapologetic with this. This is what I love. It lights me up. I know it makes me a better person, which has a ripple effect on everyone else. This is not from an ego place or a material place. This is genuinely just my passion, my art form. That is going to have such a different imprint than if it's like, okay, I know I really like this, but please don't be mad. Like, this is how much this costs and this is what this looks like. You know, you can already see how that can create that friction.
Yeah.
And when you see those situations where someone's like kind of poking at the wound, we call them tests, but you can use them as an opportunity to kind of fortify what your values are, who your authentic self is. And okay, am I going to just go down this path of whatever this person is saying and start, you know, criticizing myself and second guessing it and get in my head? Or am I going to be like, okay, that's a reality. I respect it. Not mine, but I love my path and I'm going to keep sharing and I'm going to continue on this.
Yes. On the note of tests, for people that don't know, what does that look like? And then also from I know you can't like fail a test, but like from a passing a test standpoint, what is that doing from a universal energy and manifestation standpoint?
So this was sort of a newer energetic that Lacey noticed, especially with clients early on in her process. And now it's just like a way of the process.
Yeah, it's so obvious.
It's so obvious when they come. But kind of how we're seeing it from an energetic standpoint, when you declare you want a manifestation or when you're manifesting something, or even if you want to get in better alignment with yourself, the universe gives you opportunities to heal any of the limiting beliefs, any of the wounding that's in the way. And so obviously you can go down and like see, okay, what's coming up. But the fastest way to see any of those limiting beliefs and wounding is with tests. And tests come in the form of two shapes. You have opportunities. So it might be like if you're like myself manifesting a wedding venue and you have a physical situation that looks very close to your list, but it's not the whole thing. Don't settle, it's a test. Or it could look like an emotional or egoic reaction to something. So it's like, oh my gosh, how dare they say that to me? Or, oh my gosh, do I need to play small? Any moment where you're questioning yourself, your self-worth, or just like gives you a big emotional reaction, you snap on someone or you feel really just angry or dysregulated, it's like a crack into your nervous system, a crack into your subconscious. Something beneath the surface is going on here. And our therapy advisor, Janelle Nelson, always talks about this concept that if it's hysterical, it's historical.
Ooh, I love that.
So if you have a larger than life reaction to something, it's more than just meets the surface. It's more than the car cut you off while you were driving. There's more to the story here. It's, do you feel unseen? Do you feel invalidated? Was the car cutting you off the cherry on top of a week of feeling like you didn't matter and that your presence doesn't matter? And that feels so painful. And that test is actually allowing you to sit down and hold space for the part that's suffering, that's in pain, that just wants to express its feelings. And when you can do that, then you can actually integrate it and pass the test.
And so when you do pass a test, what happens energetically in terms of like the universe responding to that and ideally like bringing the right opportunity closer to you?
truthfully, when you can pass a test, especially with ease, and there's varying degrees of that, right? Like one way of passing the test is like, okay, I recognize that I want to feel angry in this space, and I do feel angry, but I'm not going to take the action.
I see you and I raise you, not going to react.
Yeah, I'm not going to react to it, but I still feel the internal feeling with it. And then eventually over time, your internal state changes. And so as you start passing the test, the universe it's basically up leveling. You're becoming a different version of self. It means that you're creating different associations in your brain to different trigger points, which means your self-worth is changing, which means your default patterning of when this happens, it means this about me. Instead, if this happens, it doesn't mean anything about me, and I'm great, and I don't have to worry about this anymore. So it's really changing your timeline, and that's going to super speed your manifestation process.
So just to kind of like make the process very clear for people. So we started with limiting beliefs and like really identifying those. And because we manifest from our subconscious, those really matter because we need to pinpoint the areas that are creating our reality effectively. So that involves going into deep imaginings, which maybe share a little bit more about what that looks like for people.
We have a custom hypnosis track that we created to help you with theta waves drop into the deepest level of self-hypnosis, which allows you to go into theta wave brain state, which is where you can actually really move things in your subconscious, access things in your subconscious. We have some somatic tools in there to connect with your body. We have some breath work to connect with your breath. And it's really a holistic exercise of dropping you in and then pulling up and identifying the biggest pain points. We have DIs we have 70.
They're amazing.
Plus, at this point, you can have one for a general test or trigger that's coming up. You can have one if you're triggered with body image, one if you're triggered with fear, one if you have anxiety coming up, one if you're facing like that feeling when the rug is pulled out from under you and the worst case scenario is happening. Like, how do you put yourself back together again? And in there, you'll have some sort of healing exercise where you can attune to yourself, you can understand your needs. And then we also have journal prompts that kind of pair with it, and you can do them separately or with the DIs. But the more regularly, and really what the DIs are doing, we call it like our daily practice, the more you can go in and even just do a quick touch DI. Like I was talking to Jenna Zoe, and she's been doing the self-love DI.
Yeah.
Oh, she's amazing.
She was just on here.
She's so good. But she's been doing the self-love DI. She's like, I think I'm just going to do it like every day this month, just as like a quick pick me up. And it's, 15 minutes, but it's attuning to not only the positives that you want to pull into the world and allowing you to sit in that brain state, but anything that's in the way. Where am I judging myself? Where do I need to give myself a little bit more compassion? How do we break down those barriers? Those are, those deep imaginings have single-handedly transformed my entire reality.
And so many thousands of people's realities. So, okay, we're identifying the patterns, we're bringing them up, we're working to rewire them. At what point are people creating their list? This is the fun part. And what does that look like?
So the manifestation list, we have like a couple of insider rules. One is pen and paper.
Always.
There's just so much science behind connecting new neural pathways using pen to paper. Of course, you can write it out after, but there's something about having that intention, having that curated space of I'm going to intentionally put this down, and then it cements deeper in your brain when you write it down. You can really craft a list at any time. There's so much superstition, like it only has to be on a new moon and it has to be here. You can manifest at midnight on a Tuesday. You can manifest from your bedroom floor or in the middle of a subway station.
Like don't let resistance also get in the way of, or trying to be perfect get in the way of your process.
100%. And the other thing I'll say about the list making process is you can adapt it. It's not like you inked it in blood and now it has to come through this way. As you start to peel back the layers and unblock, and as you connect to your authenticity and as you find expanders, you might be like, oh, okay, I thought I wanted it to feel and look like this, but actually I'm gonna make a little tweak here. I think I want it to be more in this route. So you can refine it over time. But again, that pen to paper to really cement like that new intention going forward. So when it comes to the list, we also have people, especially if you're new to TBM and this process and you're just kind of learning it for the first time, writing down mini and major manifestations. Major are the ones where it's like categorical. I want to manifest a partner. I want to manifest a home. I want to manifest a job. And then you'll have a bunch of details and things under there of what that will feel like, what you really want, what it's getting at your core essence. Does it line with your authentic code? Does it help bring out parts of your authentic code? But then the minis are like the one-offs. Those are fun. Those are the things that are going to get your trust with this process and that you're actually co-creating with the universe. So that would be like, I want to manifest this cool new pair of earrings, or I want to manifest a free cup of coffee, or I want to manifest a spontaneous trip somewhere to a place that's been on my bucket list. You kind of put it on there. You go through the process of unblocking, expanding, taking aligned action. But it's a lot lighter touch because oftentimes those one-off material items don't root down to like a big core wound, whereas the bigger life ones do. Yes.
Interesting.
So it allows them to come through a little bit easier. The biggest thing to get the minis through is surrender. To allow yourself to not be grasping for straws or be in desperation with it or putting it on a pedestal or being like, well, it hasn't come through yet, so that means there's something wrong with me. Can I actually say, I know this is going to come through in the next year. I am so excited and open to see like what avenue it comes through. And I'm going to follow, this is another thing back to pings, those like hits of inspiration that come through or your intuition, following those. Your pings will often lead you to your manifestations, and they will definitely lead you to your mini manifestations.
I think writing pings down in a note on your phone is like one of the most helpful things I've done because we don't always register them. They're happening whether or not you're doing To Be Magnetic, right? And it's really, in my opinion, like your intuition kind of guiding you. And same with these mini manifestations, like you're really building up that trust muscle. And I think that's where people had negative feedback about what I was saying because all the minis were like fun little things. But like, A, there's nothing wrong with that. And B, to your point, they're easier to manifest because there's no big rooted limiting belief around me getting a discounted ring. It's very simple, actually.
Exactly. And the thing that's cool about the minis is they show you the process. They're like, oh, when I do this and I step through this fear or I put myself out in this way, the universe comes back with this manifestation. So it helps you really understand your unique process. We like to say all the time, like TBM is the tools, but like you are the conductor. And so everyone's process is going to be a little bit nuanced. Everyone's going to have different patterns. You know, for me, when I do anything for self-care, because it's like one of the things I value and have a hard time prioritizing because I like grew up wanting to prioritize so many other people's needs. So I was like, oh, I'll take care of all of you guys. Mine will come last.
Yeah.
But when I step through the fear to actually put myself first, something comes through. I'm not kidding. Every single time, because that's part of my Achilles heel.
Yeah.
It's like, is she going to learn that if she actually takes care of herself, it has a positive effect? And it always does. So when I step through fear, whether it's a mini manifestation, a Kismet opportunity, maybe I meet an expander, like something always comes through when you step through that fear of whatever your personal patterning is or whatever your Achilles heel is, your core wound.
It's really fun to play with once you've kind of figured the game out. You know, like you're like, I know my little spot. I'm going to do my dry brushing tonight. And literally the next morning you bump into an expander. It's like, what a fun energy to play with.
Yes.
So we've talked a little bit about aligned action. I think that this is really important for people to understand because there is this incorrect belief that like you create the list and then you kind of just like sit back. You also talked about surrender. So there is clearly a time and a place to not push and pull and allow things and trust.
Yeah.
But there is also like very important action that needs to be taken.
Yes. So the reason we said aligned action, this is where your pings, this is where those gut feelings of like, oh, I should take this action. I should reach out to this person. I should do this thing. That is the action you want to be taking. Those are the things you want to be following. And doing that won't impede on your ability to surrender. Surrendering is really a combination of taking whatever it is you want off a pedestal, thinking that your life will be better once you have X. It's saying, oh, I know I'm going to have it at some point in time, but my life here right now is just as valuable and worth living.
There's no desperation.
Yeah, there's no desperation. But that doesn't mean you're not going to act towards it. It doesn't mean you're not going to take steps for it. The TBM process I kind of see as like a little triangle. So it's like you have unblocking, you have expanding, you have aligned action. And when you're taking aligned action, you're communicating your self-worth on a subconscious level. So if you're not taking any action, you're pretty much saying,
I don't believe in myself.
I don't believe in myself. I don't feel the need to put myself out there. It's almost a form of playing small. Especially if it's, again, the aligned action. If you're just taking action to be like, let me prove it to the universe that I'm good enough, that's not the aligned. That's going into needing to surrender. But if you are like, oh yeah, I feel so excited, even you inviting guests on, I feel so excited by this person, I'm going to reach out and invite them on my podcast. And then you have a beautiful conversation and it impacts thousands of people from that conversation. That is you being in your worth. You not being in your worth is like, I want them to come on my podcast. I'm going to write them on my list and I'm going to sit down and do nothing to have them come through. It's like, well, you have to ask. You have to put one foot out for the universe to respond to. It's like Newton's law. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. If you don't act at all, there's nothing to respond to. There's nothing to come back to. You can't get the energy back if there's literally no steps forward.
It's funny you brought that up because I was thinking, and sometimes aligned action can be a little challenging because like I put having you on the podcast on my manifestation list last year, and part of me, maybe it's an ego part of me, was like, I want them to reach out. And like, I'm just going to yap about TBM Magnetic all day and like, they're going to reach out. And then I was like, it feels really aligned for me to just shoot Jessica a DM. And it was that easy. It wasn't from a place of desperation. Your team was like, hey, she's not in New York. She prefers in person. She's actually, and then we were like, well, we'll figure it out. You had no plans to come here yet. And we were like, we'll figure it out. I knew we would sit down one day. I just knew it. Like it just felt super aligned on both sides. Your team pings me. She's coming to town. Has this date. Worked out perfectly. I think it's a really good example.
100%. And I think also if you're not taking action towards something like that, I want them to reach out. I would get curious why. Is it because you're looking for something outside of you to prove that you're good enough for them to reach out to? You know what I mean? Are you waiting for permission that you're worthy enough or good enough or big enough or successful enough for those people to just come to you? Like what does that actually mean? And does that matter on a root level, or does having the amazing conversation
what matters more? Of course. Yeah. So it's a really interesting tool to kind of look at like our intentions and again, like I feel like all of these practices that we're describing bring those limiting beliefs to the surface if you take the opportunity to really examine what's in front of you.
100%. Even with things on your list, I always go through, okay, why do I want this? What does this do for me? How do I think it will make me feel? What feeling am I trying to get by manifesting this thing? Like really just and we have these questions in the workshop too, but really getting clear again and again and again, what is at the root of what you're calling in? I think it also in a way makes the whole process easier when you do know that you want it from an authentic level,
of course,
because then you can start to feel a little bit unapologetic in your route of getting it. Whereas if you're wanting it because you want to impress someone else or because you think you should have it or because you think it is going to give you some kind of clout or this or what, impress your parents, you know, it's going to feel like resistance to keep making effort towards it because it's not even really for you. And when it's for you, it's like you're pulled to it.
It's not effortful.
Yes.
This is where I think the authentic code is really helpful. And I think there was an exercise in the challenge where you take your manifestation list and you write what parts of your code it aligns with. It makes you remove some things from your list, potentially, or double down on certain things that are on your list and just have this better understanding.
100%.
For the listener that is in the process of manifesting, what are some signs that there could be a big manifestation on the horizon for someone?
Ooh, exciting. Okay. If
so
you've
fun.
had some major tests that you have passed. So depending upon what the big manifestation is, like let's say someone's calling in a home. If you've had really big examples of homes that were like so close, but not quite the thing, and you're saying no to them because you're like, I'm not going to settle. I know my full picture thing is out there, and I know the things that it was asking me to compromise are really important to me, and I don't want to compromise on them. That's a good sign. Same with the emotionals. If you're having big emotional tests that are related to your self-worth around the manifestation, like if someone's calling in a partner and maybe they get tested with opportunities out there, but internally their biggest Achilles heel in partnership is, I'm going to lose myself if I'm in a partnership. And they keep getting tested with these opportunities to compromise their needs and maybe like go on a girls trip every weekend or go do this. And instead they're prioritizing their time, their alone time. They're like, sorry, I actually feel really excited to take this solo trip. If they're following those needs, they're very close to something big coming through.
Yeah.
And then the other one is if your expanders are like popping out of the woodwork. Like if you just have so many expanders that are around you, surrounding you, talking about these things that are happening, it's like it, and you feel related to them in some way. You're like, oh, like Kelly got that? Like, oh, okay, cool. I can definitely, I get it. My version of that will come through. Yes. That is a really good sign that they're close.
That feeling of if she can do it, I can do it is like the most empowering. And it's a sneaky one. Like it's actually such an easy thing to feel if you're looking at the right people.
100%. And allowing yourself to receive the same level of goodness. That self-worth of like, am I deserving of it too?
In terms of expanding for our audience, are you able to share some of your biggest manifestations and sort of like what your process looked like?
Yes. Oh my gosh. I've manifested my partner, my dog, my absolute dream home, my dream career, and lots of financial up levels through the TBM work. I would say the most recent was our home. And that was a tricky one for me because since I was really young, I was obsessed with this idea of having a home and getting to decorate it. Like I have little sketches of like drawing two pieces of paper together and being like, the table will go here.
That's
and the
so
chairs
cute.
will go here.
I mean, your authentic code in the rawest form.
Like screaming that this was my desire. And for me, I had to really work through feeling deserving of spending that money on myself. I was like, oh, but I should save it and I should do investing and do this. And it's like, after so long of doing all of those things, it's like, I'm doing all the right things. Yeah. At this point, I'm just playing small. At this point, I'm just in lack. And I'm not actually stepping off, like jumping off that cliff to go into the next level. But my fiance and I were in an apartment for 8 years in LA. Wow. And we were saving so much money. It was fantastic. But I realized that my surroundings didn't reflect like what I really wanted to be in. And I was at the place financially where I could make that leap, but I was terrified of doing it. I was like, wait, what will people think? Like, they're going to think I'm spending all this money. Like, what, oh my gosh, how is my family going to feel? What's going to happen here? And I got really, really clear and rooted back to my authentic code. I was like, Jess, you value home. Your environment makes a big difference. You're recording your podcast to millions of people from home. You need to feel energized by your space. Like your energy is going to make an impact on the people that you're interacting with, on the people you're doing business with, on the workshops you're creating for TBM. Like you need to honor allowing your energy to be a priority because it is going to impact other people. And just seeing like how connected it was to my authentic code. We had a couple of expander options when we were looking and they weren't fully it, and then this one came on the market and it was literally everything and more, but it felt even bigger than what we were ready to step into. And so there was like a nervous system up level of like, wow, okay, let me not be stupid with my money, but let me just, okay, everything checks out, we can do this, let's take the leap. And it was by far the best decision I ever made. And sure, someone could be like, oh, well, you have the money, so nice for you. But it's not about that. It's about that inner narrative transformation. It's about feeling like I wasn't worthy of something that I was able to get for myself. And then for other people, think about that on a small level. What is one thing you tell yourself, especially if you're someone that comes from scarcity or lack mentality, what is one thing you tell yourself you absolutely can't have? You can have that when you get here. What's a small version of that? When I was in my apartment, I would get the pieces of furniture that I wanted to be in my future house. Because I was like, okay, well, if I'm not ready to move in a house yet, at least I'm expanding myself, that I'm at least going to invest in pieces that have longevity, that are artisan created, that I want to have in my future home. So it's like, even if you're not going to get your big full manifestation, what are those little things you can be doing in the interim that's signaling to your brain, like, it's safe. It's safe to do this. It's safe to invest in this. You're worthy of this. And keep feeding that over and over.
And like really believe that it's on your way to you. You wouldn't have been buying those expensive, specific furniture pieces if you didn't deeply believe that the house were on its way to you.
100%.
Jessica, thank you so much for coming on today.
Yay.
I know everyone's going to be dying to follow you and to also understand more about To Be Magnetic. So where are all the places that they can access you and Lacey and the program?
Yes. To Be Magnetic on Instagram, TikTok, we're just starting to dabble in. We have the expanded podcast by To Be Magnetic, weekly Friday podcasts, all manifestation tips and insights. You can follow my Instagram at Jessica Ashley Gill. My stories are really where it's at. That's like
great stories.
I love going on stories and sharing manifesting tips, getting better at grid posts. But yeah, and tobemagnetic.com. If you guys use the code Jessica, all caps, you can get 15% off.
Amazing.
Your membership. Very exciting.
Great. We'll link to everything in the show notes, but really appreciate you coming on.
Yes.
Bringing my manifestation to reality.
Yes. And we have to have you on to share your manifestation story.
I would die.
Yes.
I would like die of excitement for that.
Let's do it.
Done.